If you're interested in combining customer loyalty and subscription revenue, Claris Commerce can help. Named a contender in the Forrester Wave Loyalty Solutions Q2 2021, Claris is the only company solely focused on premium loyalty programs for retailers, from the technology platform to the services needed for a successful program. To learn more, download Claris's premium loyalty content bundle at clariscommerce.com/total retail.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, Editor-in-Chief of Total Retail, and I am joined on today's show by Christine Moody, the founder and managing director of Team Magnus. And Christine and I are going to discuss the growth of her brand and particularly how it's excelled selling on the Amazon marketplace. So thank you for joining me today, Christine.
It's a pleasure. Really pleased to be here.
So to get us started, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Team Magnus for those that aren't familiar with it?
Team Magnus is a pre-teen sports brand. So we develop a position wedged between the big performance brands, Nike, Adidas, and at the other end of the scale, the suppliers of backyard toys, entry-level sports equipment. And while these big global sports brands that I mentioned, they obviously have great appeal to older children, they can literally be very, very gray, very black, very adult. At that cheaper end of the scale I mentioned, for the younger kids, it really is a very, very fragmented market. I would say you'd be stretched to say that there are brand presence there to talk about if the branding does exist. It tends to be, to my eyes, to my kids' eyes, very sort of pirate and princess-like, and kids grow out of that very quickly. So we found that what's cool for an 8-year-old or what's cool for an 11-year-old, really, you're to a great extent left with those big international sports franchises like the big soccer brands, the big NBA brands. Those are fun. They're very attractive for kids, no doubt about it, but they're very limited ranges. Maybe a little bit of apparel, maybe some balls, maybe some beach towels. But we at Team Magnus, we develop entry-level sports gear, winter, summer, also backyard toys, just to keep kids active all year round, summer and winter. And I feel that position is one we've succeeded in establishing very well, maybe in a slightly open space, to be honest.
And tell us a little bit about your distribution channels for the products you sell. Tell us, how you're getting your products out in front of customers.
This last year, we're looking at 97% Amazon. This is something that you can steer yourself to an extent with price differentials or where you choose to offer your widest range. We have focused on Amazon simply for as one route to market. It doesn't mean that we can't turn on the taps on our own website when we want to, but as you pointed out, distribution could also be very time consuming if you're trying to run two parallel channels at the same time.
Yeah. And then how about your professional background, Christine? Tell us a little bit about, what was your inspiration for launching Team Magnus, the particular category? Tell us a little bit about the story behind the launch of the brand.
Well, partly, and this is why I sort of recognize what you've achieved with Total Retail Talks. My background is in media. I really enjoyed my time as a stock market commentator on CNBC. Covering European stocks, and before that I was a companies reporter with the Financial Times in London. I do love companies and business and entrepreneurship in particular. That's been a fun professional background to have, but I wouldn't have started the company if I hadn't been a mother who had moved between two countries with very different cultures for how you bring up kids. So there's quite a cute story really about my son Magnus. You can hear the name is named after him. He was 3 years old. We were moving back as a family from Scandinavia, from Oslo to Scotland, which I'm quite familiar with. I was there at university. And this is a little boy who speaks no English whatsoever, but he had this really cool snow racer. I see they're quite big in North America. We sell a lot of them in Canada now as well. He had just the coolest gear for snow in his peer group here in Scotland. He had a great German bounce bike. That was quite a new thing back then. And you could just see that having the right gear in a new environment gave him a little bit of assertiveness, a little bit of confidence, and of course it built physical skills as well. And that's, to me, it was obvious that British kids didn't have access. They were just not as well equipped as Nordic kids are. And I think maybe in the US, you could see that kids in some of the northern states, they're very well prepared for 4 seasons. And that really is the idea behind the company, to make this quite democratic and make it accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and fill that void in the market that you said to make this type of product available to all kids. It's a great endeavor. So tell us a little bit about how the last year has impacted Team Magnus's business. Obviously, with a worldwide pandemic, tell us a little bit about the impact that you've seen at your company.
Right at the start of the pandemic, it was very clear that we could be of help, because families needed to entertain their kids. And partly, of course, everyone needed to kill time, but we also needed to keep our kids active. We need to keep them sane. We needed to keep them healthy. Now, Italy, for example, is a country where people tend to live in apartments. It's not as spaced out as in the US or in France, which are physically bigger countries. People live in flats, apartments. When they entered their first really strict lockdowns, sales of our soft neoprene balls, we do soccer balls, volleyballs, rugby balls, or what you would call footballs, rugby balls over here in the UK. Those sales went through the roof. I mean, by a factor of 15 or 20 week by week. Kids just needed to dribble indoors with balls that didn't damage the lamps or the furniture. And we saw that pick up later in the US market when families were confined to their backyards. The biggest product by far was our XL slip and slide, the 31-foot slip and slide. It just keeps the kids running for hours on end, back and forth, sliding, running. And this year it's slightly different. The leading product is our Incog water gun, but again, it relates to social distancing. It's a safe way for kids to keep active, but without engaging too closely, maybe with a playmate. So we saw in numbers, summer sales doubling that's just for the summer season, March through to August. They doubled from $2 million to $4 million, and we're well on track to hit $8 million in this 6-month period. On the downside, we obviously had the same supply chain problems as everyone else.
Yeah, that was what I was going to follow up with, Christine. Obviously, this is a good problem to have, that your sales are accelerating at such a rate. But then, as you noted, the flip side of that is, okay, we have to fulfill all this demand. So you got to talk about the issues that potentially came up with supply chain and getting your deliveries and getting product in the customer's hands. Tell us a little bit about what you've done at Team Magnus to kind of account for that increase in demand, and how you're any changes you've had to make to your supply chain to keep up.
Totally, because I've been interested by conversations you've had in the past about consumer expectations and e-commerce culture. I wonder if there's been a little bit of an education of customers, a little bit of an understanding of what UPS does, a little bit of an understanding what delivery drivers do. I wonder if that next day, next hour delivery expectation, people maybe understand logistics. Consumers, e-commerce consumers understand logistics a little bit better, and it's been a hard learning curve for everyone. UPS will have dropped some of their client promises, and by client promises I mean us, like the accounts that they have with corporate clients, for example. They just couldn't stick to the schedules that they might have had in a non pandemic year, if that's a word. We found that this was all solved by managing expectations and by excessive levels of consumer. We sat all hours and responded, kept people informed, really quick to offer additional products or free delivery, apologize, and not pretend it wasn't a problem, like warn them heads up. In our instance, quite often it's birthday gifts, something for a child. It's not something parents just feel bad if something is delivered late. So it could be inbound carriage, it could be problems in the warehouse, or it could be something at a UPS hub where they simply had illness considerations or new procedures they had to apply. So I felt overall customers were pretty understanding, and if they weren't, it was really up to us to explain or make concessions.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna ask, Christine, is that did you find that your customers were a little more forgiving? They understood the crunch that was happening, this e-commerce surge, obviously, as people weren't going into physical stores. That your customers were a little understanding, and you said more forgiving if an order was late or delayed.
I would say there's a lot of civil people out there, and most people have their own day jobs, and they had their own crunches and their own bottlenecks. I felt so long as we replied quickly. I think the frustration is, and I'm sure Joe, as a consumer, you feel that as well, it's when they don't reply. I mean, if they reply with an update, which is a real update, you will just accept it. But if you wait for 2 days, and I don't understand how companies do that either, because the workload is the same. Like the amount of emails you have to respond to, it's the same. It's no quicker if you delay it by 24 hours. You just have to get through the workload. So we really, if you take the people who work on consumer care in the different languages, Spanish, Italian, German, French, English for us, we space it out, check in every second hour so that everybody gets a reply shortly, because it costs no more time for us. It's just a little bit of time management to look after those service-related inboxes.
And to your point, as long as you're reaching out and you're transparent and you're communicating with your customer, I think given in the last year, everyone kind of understands, and there's that more of acceptance that, as long as you're communicating with your customers, that they'll be a little more understanding. So I want to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned, I believe you said the figure, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said up to 97% of your sales are coming through the Amazon marketplace. So tell us a little bit about why selling on Amazon has become such a critical part of Team Magnus's growth, particularly over the last year plus.
Exactly. Now, I've spoken to investors over a period of time, and I would say that that's a number that would have appeared to be a liability or a weakness or a concern if that's Amazon volume as opposed to through your own website. Now, in the last year, the investor interest in Amazon FBA vendors it's huge. It's a 180-degree different attitude. The way I see it is that in terms of search, Amazon really serves as a commercial search engine. And that might sound very obvious, but what I mean to say is that if you enter the same search terms in Google or Bing, it's populated with very mixed search results. So we, for example, sell the slip and slide I mentioned earlier. You might type in water slide, and you get a very crowded field. It might include water park destinations, for example. So if you enter those same search words on Amazon, you get perfectly tailored results for what you had in mind. That's why I'm specific about commercial searches. And you can see why consumers do their purchasing researches on Amazon first, maybe before they go on to Google for the brand that they've identified on Amazon. There's a great deal of that. So it's not only about Prime membership or the logistics or the pricing or whatever else comes with it. You really need a lot of digital marketing effort to replicate the relevance of a good Amazon search results. And then it's a whole little ecosystem that you could tap into to build the visibility to get on that page one. They offer Vine reviews. They offer FBA fulfillment for those customers who filter for Prime. Now they offer Amazon video ads. It's very manageable for a small operator compared to the Google universe, I would say, to get to page one for the search words.
Tell us maybe a little bit about your internal team that's managing this process in terms of the listings and everything. For context, is that a marketing person or a group of people? Tell us a little about kind of how managing your products on Amazon works for Team Magnus.
Yeah, we have a really positive attitude to languages. I know a lot of e-commerce businesses, they lean very much towards they think it's a maths problem almost with digital marketing. It's a click per rate. It's an ACOS calculations. There's a lot of abbreviations out there. We think that it's about a good understanding of languages and not only relying on Google Translate for things. Now, if you do add, I know to an American mind, Germany and France are considerably smaller, but we're still talking about 80 million people. If you add those reviews in all those countries, all of a sudden you're accumulating a lot more reviews on Amazon.com as well. So you go from 400 reviews to 1,000 reviews, thanks to an ability or willingness to just sit and translate. Now, that's not a big job. You get a good native speaker, you translate into Polish or Japanese or another big Amazon market. You translate that in 2 or 3 working days. You can have a smart graduate doing that, and that's better in my eyes than everyone chasing the same English language search words.
Yeah. Because
it's a whole business universe of people trying to chase these cool search words for the American market, and you could add a lot of custom with a little bit of upfront investment in languages.
Yeah, you're targeting a smaller funnel there with those search words, so you're more likely to get on page 1, to your point, and convert.
That's right. So 80 million French people are really very within reach. And e-commerce advisor we use it. He says it's like a goal without a goalkeeper.
Yeah, right. I was going to follow up. So you've talked to, this might be a little bit of some of the things you've already mentioned, but your overall marketplace strategy on Amazon. Tell us a little bit why you believe and what you attribute Team Magnus's success selling on the platform has been. Obviously, some of the things you've talked about in the search in terms of the product descriptions, making it native to individual searchers' language. Some of the other things that you believe have been really, critical to driving sales on Amazon for Team Magnus. Can you tell us about those?
I think return rate is maybe something that we all benefit from focusing on, and the environment would benefit if we all focus on that. If you're quick, and if you're just a person and they don't feel, I'm being sold, people sell me services don't like digitized or automated responses. So you get software packages that recognize keywords in the customer request, and then they get a standardized reply. And I'm not saying that isn't applicable for loads of big companies, but if you don't go down that route and you are very responsive, and we take great care to pick up on details in customers' emails, like, is something for birthday? Is it for a sibling? Are there 3 kids? Is it for a boy? If we try and tap into that, respond really, really quickly, you retain the customer. So instead of just didn't suit or didn't arrive in time, you start a conversation. I might be saying something very obvious, but I, as a customer myself, I don't feel that all companies are addressing this. I do feel that the actual personal conversation leads to a replacement instead of the refund. And that has given us, we are just doing our full year numbers now, despite COVID, despite all those logistics problems, distribution problems, we had a return rate of 6% over 4 quarters, and that really is very low in the industry. I think that's just customer service, and a little bit, of course, credit to the products and the manufacturers, of course.
Yeah, that's great. A return rate, around 6% is really solid. And then, to your point, you've turned that experience of what could be a potentially negative interaction with the customer. They're not happy with the product for whatever reason the case may be. If you turn that into a positive and help solve their problem, that customer is, 1, going to be more satisfied, and then 2, they're probably likely to come back and purchase again. Have you found that to be the experience as well?
Oh, completely. No, we do. That's another plus about Amazon. Of course, the data that they share with their vendors are really, really very helpful. There was a really touching thing, a trend we discovered. I can't remember what time things lightened. Of course, things are very different in the different US states, but there was a period, I believe, in June or early July, where grandparents could have their grandkids around again. And they And they were fired up. I'm telling you, these are couples who've been on their own in their house for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And they got to see their grandkids again. They were planning this, and they had ordered this or that. They were wanting it to be a special day. I could just imagine that they had the menu and everything all planned. And then, you know, the product wasn't delivered, and we would just overnight it. We would just compensate, because we knew that was a touching moment in the lives of someone who aren't expecting to see their kids that frequently. We think that when you look into those statistics, you could see that that the reordering or the willingness to go back to us at wintertime, combined with good marketing material, of course, inside your packaging, etc., they definitely come back.
Yeah. You've created a valuable experience for them, and you've met their needs. They're likely to come back and purchase again, which leads into my final question, Christine, around kind of looking ahead. You've really seen this explosive growth, which is fantastic. The next question then becomes is, okay, how do you sustain that and potentially build upon it? So where is your attention focused as you look to continue the momentum that Team Magnus has created in the last 12 or so months?
Exactly. Yeah. The simplest thing is to continue to invest in teammagnus.com. It is better for cash flow, as anyone will tell you. You take instant card payments instead of waiting for Amazon releases, etc. Now, we know a company that communicates a lot with customers, you know, rightly or wrongly. We were never a social media focused company. But of course, on your website, you showcase the rest of your product range. You could showcase your credentials, you know, with your blogs, everything that reveals your authenticity. But in addition, there's other low-hanging fruit. Amazon does create low-cost new channels. It's the same route to market. So if they open another country, Turkey or Singapore or Malaysia or Poland or the Netherlands, you do have the same distribution and very many similar systems. So it's not costly to grow that way. But for us, in our case, I think I only briefly touched on product development. Most of our growth definitely comes from new product ranges, like a new launch. We launched our water gun, the Incog, which is very sort of spy-like, very subtle looking, very non-water gun-like. It's meant to look more like a digital gadget, I guess, in sort of steel gray. We launched them late in the summer of 2020 because the development took longer, and because of COVID, container transport took longer. I mean, it was a couple $100,000 initially at the end of the season. And from the traction we can see now, it will be a couple of $1 million. It's going to overtake last year's biggest product, which was the slides. That's how fast. That's very, very fast. And that's just your upfront investment in product development. My hunch, Joe, has always been that if you see how, you know, the states where we sell the most is Connecticut, New York, Illinois, that's Chicago, and Colorado. These are our biggest, that's where we have the biggest penetration. If people here are spending a fair amount of money on their decking or their gas cooker outside, or their teak furniture, or their flower beds, you know, I mentioned grandparents earlier. We sell a lot to grandparents. If they've invested in that beautiful backyard, they just don't want the $9.99 slide lying around.
Yeah.
And I've never understood that. I said right at the outset that backyard gear, it's so fragmented and there's not a lot of design thought going into it. But these are huge, bulky plastic items. They might as well be in a pleasant green color, you know? Yeah.
No. So, yeah, it's really interesting that you've pointed out product development and product extensions as areas of growth, at least opportunities. I do want to just touch on the D2C angle as well, as you mentioned in the first part of your answer. As you try to grow that part of the business and getting more customers to the teammagnus.com site, what is your kind of marketing strategy to generate that traffic? Is it investments in things like search and social media and these other, you know, channels to drive people to the .com site? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how you can bulk up that D2C business.
I think a little bit technically about sort of architecture of the website, SEO focused. I think you need to get those foundations straight. And that's very tedious work with everything that you're familiar with tagging or product page names. The opposite of keyword stuffing. It has to be quite intelligent and quite thought through. And Google will also read. And I guess Bing isn't as widely used in Europe as Google is, but gearing your page and your website architecture towards how you expect they read the pages. That's a basic, and you probably harvest the value of that for a long time. Otherwise, a tool when you're registered as a brand on Amazon, and this sounds a bit back to front, I'm sure, but when you registered as a brand on Amazon, you get access to their search research, as it were, the search words, keyword. What is it called? Amazon Brand Registry keyword data, something like that. Long term.
Long tail.
Yeah, you with.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, if 50% of e-commerce search or if 50% of e-commerce transactions in the US are on Amazon, then that is a hefty database they have. So you could see, for example, for something like snow skis, I'm Nordic. I interact with so many people in Michigan or Minnesota. We always see the ski orders going to Alaska from September onwards. I think like a very Nordic northern person, but people type in skis and they might be thinking water skis, and I go, oh, so they do in the rest of the world. So you have to adjust. You obviously have to adjust your SEO work, your product detail pages, etc., according to that. But yes, in short, we're more focused on what I call the digital asset of a solid page, and maybe fed a little bit by the good analysis. That means that we know where we are on page 2 and page 3, where we have a realistic shot of getting to page 1, rather than the campaigns, rather than ad campaigns.
Yeah, and using that data about your customers, as you learn more about your customers and their behavior, that can help you to create better product detail pages and keywords. And to your point, you learn more about your customers, you're better able to serve them.
Yeah.
Great.
If you second guess their thinking a bit, yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think we're just about out of time for today's episode, but I want to take the opportunity first to thank Christine Moody, the founder and managing director of Team Magnus, for joining us on today's show and telling us all about her business. So thank you for joining me, Christine.
Joe, this was great fun. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcast for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.
Claris Commerce can build, manage, and optimize a premium loyalty program for your brand that combines customer loyalty and subscription revenue. To learn more, download Claris's premium loyalty content bundle at clariscommerce.com/totalretail.